All right, so today's session is going to be relatively short. We're just wrapping up document 4, which is the document focused on change of ownership. And the part that we're addressing is ownership transfer from locals to state. In the previous session, we did state to locals. So let's jump right into it. So, okay, what we're looking at here is the geo workspace for TSN processing, just like we have, just like we did in the last session for everything. And the layers we're looking at on the map, the yellow represent all of the all roads. Turn off this blue stuff here just for a quick second. The orange on top of the yellow represents a state SHS all roads route. And then the blue is the DynSeg of the TSN route segments, which represents the dynamic segmentation of the TSN-based calibration. So the goal really is to take this stretch of artificial road that I've created and incorporate it into this manufactured Route 997 that we're looking at here. So to do that, really what we're just going to do is, for the most part, all of the actual detailed steps for accomplishing this whole workflow are already laid out in previous documents that we've already gone over. But we're just going to kind of put the cake together using those, referencing those other documents. So just like before, first thing we want to do is to export our dynamic segmentation of TSN route segs and also the dynamically segmented sequence listing points, go save them out to physical geometry so that we, for a few reasons, so we have a plan B in case we need to reference them for work, but also so we have a recovery plan in case we make some mistake and we need to get that information back. So, manage data, output to feature class. Make sure that your target connection is the local MDB database that has sort of your editing data in it. The two things we want to output, just like before, are dynamic segmentation of attribute query of TSN route segs and dynamic segmentation of attribute query of TSN sequence listing old. So we can say okay to, or we as always with output to feature class, we want to look at the advanced tab. This, again, I've said it before, but I really feel like this should be a wizard, not a tab, because every time you're going to want to look at the advanced tab when you're outputting to feature class. Okay, and we're going to append, just like it says in the workflow that goes through this in detail. So the TSN route segs are going to go to TSN route segs old. That sets to append because we're appending to an existing feature class, not creating a new one. And then the sequence listing query is going to go to the calibration points feature class. All right, and we say okay to this. And by the way, when we say okay, you'll see this calibration points and TSN route segs old go from 0 to however many there are. Great, done. And since I have those as display on currently in the legend, you can actually see them. Anyhow, confident they're there. And maybe I should just look at the workflow document real quick and just be clear about which. So outputting to physical geometry using 3.1. Okay, next step is we're going to delete the TSN route segment event records that are going to be affected by this change. Um, so, actually, let me, for just to keep the map a little bit clean, let's get rid of the stuff we don't need to see. Whenever you say right click and say delete within the legend, you're not actually deleting data. You're just deleting, removing it from the legend, removing a given layer from the legend. Okay, so let's just delete this guy. So what I'm selecting here is is this layer, the TSN route segs event layer, because after we incorporate this into the route, into the on system route, all the odometers for everything starting here and moving downstream are going to change. So we know that these segments, or at least this segment, is history. So go in here, just go ahead and delete it. All right, but it's still set up at the all roads level. So I'm going to just display this remaining segment off. Display off. And again, what we're going to do is now integrate these two off-system route sections into the on-system portion. So let's see. Basically, all we have to do is double-click on each of these two segments and change their attributes to an appropriate LRS key to the appropriate LRS key for this particular on-system portion. So maybe just to look back at the route that we're actually editing, it's State Highway System 997. So all we need to do is double click on each of these and change their attributes appropriately. Change it from street to state highway system. Truth is there's no harm in having county, jurisdiction, street name attributes, but the trigger, because we're now setting this to state highway system, the trigger won't use them. So I'm just going to leave that there. But what we do need to get rid of is the LRS key pre. Change it to 997 because that's where the information about the actual state highway number comes from. And remember, I said before that if you feed it an LRS key, if you hard code or hard create an LRS key manually, then the system will take that. So I'm deleting that. And I think I'll get rid of these begin and end measures for good measure. Say OK to that. And do the same thing here. State highway system 997. Now it's probably I've mentioned this before, but when you change a route to state highway system, it doesn't GeoMedia is not immediately aware that the data has changed underneath in the database for view of SHS routes. So in order to let GeoMedia know that that's happened, basically it needs to reread the data from the database, because what we're looking at right now is just it's read it once and it's cached. I've shown you before in order to force GeoMedia to reread data, you go here and choose the connection that you want to reread from. You can say reopen connection. I just want to show you another trick, another way to do that that's actually probably more efficient. If you use it, whenever you apply a spatial filter, and I think we've talked about spatial filters before. I know I have with Keith anyway. Basically, every time you apply a spatial filter, it rereads the data within your spatial filter. So I'm going to go ahead and do it that way just so you can see how that works. This button right here applies a spatial filter based on your current view window. So essentially what it does is it draws a box based on where you're viewing on the map. And so when I bounce the connection with this, there we go, it just reread and everything turned orange. I want to just ask you guys real quick, is it clear? I just want to make sure that you guys are clear where this is going. I feel like I'm moving pretty fast through the workflow already. Just giving you guys an opportunity to ask a question. Okay. Take the silence as an answer in and of itself.
Pretty straightforward.
Okay, cool, good. Okay, so let's look at the next step here. Okay, what we need to do now is update the calibration to the all roads route. We've seen how to do that before, but let's go ahead and do this again. We like to use a query to apply our calibration against. So let's do that. Let's see, where LRS pre is in, let's update our query 7, just simple attribute query of routes, to reference the route we want to calibrate. So this is going to be SHS 997. And because we're looking at the pre field, it doesn't include the carriage flag portion.
The pre, when you inserted it, wasn't it just 997 or?
It was, but the trigger updated it.
Okay. So it's SHS underscore 997 for the pre.
Yeah, that's the value that's in there now.
Okay.
So even though that's a good observation, Keith. And that said, I mean, if you look at the LRS key trigger logic document, I mean, I'm obviously, if you have ideas about ways to modify this logic to make things easier, better for you, more streamlined, whatever, I'm all ears. It's a pretty easy thing to modify. Yeah, and here I'll just for kicks, let me show you. Yeah, you're right. What I put in here was just 997, but on insert it said, oh, that says 997. I'm going to tag that a route type onto it, and blah blah, and do this and do that. Okay. Oh, you know what? There's a step that we need to accomplish as well, which is technically we are supposed to merge these two to keep it according to standard. There should only be splits at intersections. So let's merge these two. So I was just holding the shift key, by the way, when I selected those two. Vector merge. Like I mentioned before, whenever you merge segments together, it inherits the attributes of the first segment that you selected. Say OK to that. Okay, that's done. Now that's one segment. Okay, and the last step is the interactive calibration. Well, that's not the last step. It's the next step. Yeah, the attribute query of routes is what we want, but I need it to be on the map in order to select it on the map for the command. So display on. Oh man. You guys saw that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. VPN connection, maybe, or just
no.
no.
I wish I could blame it on your network. No, that's just GeoMedia crashing.
No. You didn't have that many layers on open at once, but whatever. You had spatial filter also.
Yeah. I mean, you know, when you find desktop GIS software that never crashes, let me know about it.
Yeah.
Maybe okay, back on. Let me just get the legend set up the way we want it. All right. Everything's cool. I'm gonna turn on attribute query of routes. Okay, and that's not working because it doesn't remember. Um, Come on. You guys understand what I'm doing here? 997.
Yeah, you're just resetting the query.
Yeah. Since the query definition is saved as part of the Geo workspace, and the Geo workspace crashed before I saved it. All right, there we go. And lastly, I'm just going to locatable these things off so that GeoMedia doesn't get confused about what I'm trying to locate when I do the calibration, the interactive calibration. All right, interactively calibrate. Cool. On query 7. Use a field value or a length. We can start at 0. All right, select segment 1, select segment 2, and select segment 3. Right click, end route. We've only got one LRS key, 0 to 916. Say OK. And now when we look at these, we can see that their begin and end measures are all populated. All right, so this has served its purpose. All right, next step is to look at TSN route segs. So something else we need to do here is update the queries. Oh, because GeoMedia crashed, I also need to update the queries for TSN route segs. All right, we're good here. And for sequence listing old, we're good there. And sequence listing new, okay, we're good there. All right, let's add sequence listing new as a data window. Let's see here. There we go. Display data window. All right, everything's over here to the far right. Now, I left this original TSN route seg on there because I thought that the recalibration shouldn't affect it, but I think I might have been wrong about that now. Oh no, I think it's right actually. Okay, so I left that there because I knew that the the location for this point and the calibration up to that point wasn't going to change in the all roads. It was only where we merged in this new stuff that things started to change. So, that I guess I'm making the point that in the case where you're lengthening a route somewhere in the middle of the route, the stuff upstream doesn't need to change, which I know is completely obvious to Tim and Keith and Lars, but just want to make sure that that's clear. Now it's just a matter of going through and adding our additional segments to account for the rest of these unaccounted for sequence listing points, which are all set to unlocatable. As usual, the first thing we want to do is make sure we're sending by ODO, which we are. And I'm just going to digitize these in now. So let me just make sure I'm following the script appropriately here. Yeah, okay, use workflow 3.4 to rebuild the TSN, the affected TSN route seg events based on new sequence listing records. So kind of just for my own sanity, I marked the ones that I'm going to call Q1 points with these little asterisks, astri there, whatever the plural is for asterisk. So LRS, insert LRS event. We're going to the view of SHS routes is going to be the layer that serves as our all roads route layer. That's all set up right. And I'm going to use the attribute query of TSN route segs as our event features. We already talked about how that's a filter of TSN route segs. And we could, in theory, also use just the TSN route segs as our event features.
Hey, Adam. Okay.
Yeah.
I just had a question. In the event, so when in a real world scenario, those unlocatable sections, those will come from TSN, and we'll have to manually insert those record by record, or for each unlocatable when we're trying to do the DynSeg attribute query. The TSN route segs, or is there a way we can you get my question?
This would be an example of an unlocatable, right?
Right, yeah.
There's no landmark.
Yeah, like TSN would say, hey, there's this section that we just inserted into TSN. We're going to pull that out. And, how, do we do one record? Do we insert one record at a time? Or, how does that come into play? The section that you just recalibrated in the all roads. Yeah. Because, instead of going route ID, alignment, filling all that stuff out, we'll probably have like 30 or 10 or 15 post-mount locations, or maybe even more, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like on 111.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So, I guess I'm sorry. I'm not understanding the question.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so we have an existing sequence listing, right? So let's say, we did a poll today and TSN, there's that segment that you just digitized, okay? That's, we can digitize that. But that segment there, TSN says it's now here to here. Where do we insert that in our sequence listing would have an updated version, right? But the route segs, we have to
from before.
Yeah. How and when,
what you'll have available to you are the calibration points that we dumped out in a few minutes ago. So let me just turn those on. So these are the physically anchored point locations from the previous TSN sequence listing points. These are the previous sequence listing points, and I have them symbolized with their landmarks. So this doesn't demonstrate all that well what the value is of that, but I'll just say this: on 111, because I was able to show these old sequence listing points, even though the route information that those sequence listing points had disappeared because I deleted those TSN route seg events. I mean, those are still anchored there, and their landmark locations are still visible. So what you can do is match up landmarks between the new and the old as you go down the line. That's what I did on 111. And that way, basically what that did is it told me what you had previously defined as Q1
right.
point.
So basically that new segment that came from TSN, we're not worried about even there are 20 postmile locations. We're worried about the previously logged Q1s, right? We have to match those landmark and postmiles to each other, and then update the TSN sequence list, right? Or to generate the route segments. Is that correct?
Well, this workflow is a manual workflow to recreate the segments that are at and downstream from the location of the lengthening.
Okay.
So I mean, this is the manual process to do it. Doing anything beyond that is I mean, we've been referring to that, right, as the I-5 route realignment in San Diego problem, where we'll, once we feel comfortable with this workflow, then we'll start talking in more depth about a more sophisticated approach to preserving the downstream segments. But the reality of this workflow is that we have deleted the downstream segments and we're recreating them now.
Right. From where it was deleted all the way down. Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Existing all the way down.
Yep. So have I answered your question though? I'm not certain I fully understand the question still.
Yeah, I'm just I guess when we have the thing is we have, like I just mentioned, we have like just in this case, okay, that segment, that middle portion there that was ownership transferred, right? That piece we did the recalibration. Now it's a piece of the route. Now in TSN, that segment would have, let's just an example, it'll have 20 postmile locations in between that segment. But currently we have 2, 3 landmark descriptions, long landmark descriptions, right? Now those are going to go away because they're current. They're going to be removed. Now those 20 postmile locations, we only worry about those that match those, let's say 3 Q1 points, and then update this table that's shown up here, the TSN sequence list, or I'm just wondering, those 20 locations, they're important to us. Basically we want to map every location we can, but because we only have 3. Yeah.
So are you saying that the 20 locations you're talking about, in
From
theory,
there,
would
all
be
right.
to where the ingested, or I'm not sure what
Yeah,
the right
right.
word is, but
Or
so they would all be inside of here.
right. But we're focused
And
on
you would want
only
to,
three, right?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, you can make the new segments we're about to digitize as, I mean, all of those point locations will be described in your new sequence listing data. And if it's the same as any time you digitize a new TSN route segment event. Is you know you can do it at every single location. I mean, it's or you can do it just at every other one. Depending on how tight you want to make your calibration. I suppose it's fair to say this example doesn't. I mean, it's obviously a simplified example, so it doesn't take all those intermediate locations into account.
Right.
Let me just show you what I'm going to do here, and then I'll see if that addresses what you're asking. Is that cool?
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead. I'll finish the demo.
Okay. So all right. So we can see that this sequence listing point is already accounted for. Because it doesn't have a status message, and by the way, its point is landing in the right location. Its landmark is behind the tennis court. So this is the same point as the exported TSN old point. The next potential point of calibration is Berryman Canyon Road, which I believe is this. I have to make it locatable in order to see it. Come on. So, yep, Berryman Canyon. So this represents a new point of potential point of calibration, because this stretch from here to here used to not be on the state highway system. I guess for the purpose of the demo, I was just going to go from here all the way to El Camino Real, which is right here. I was going to call this a Q3 and this a Q1, the equivalent of that. So, but there's nothing stopping you from calling that a Q1. So, all right, we're all set up. All right, begin location is, this has to be locatable, because what we want to do is snap to the end of that. This is locatable off because we don't want to use that, and this is locatable on because this is the actual route that we're calibrating to. All right, and we want the endpoint glyph. There it is. The route is 997, so we're going to go from here to El Camino Real. Endpoint glyph. There. Our dialog box will come up. 997, alignment right. Oh, and I failed to look at the ODOs. All right, I'm going to just say OK. So what we have right now is a TSN route segment that doesn't have ODO information, so I need to look back and get it. So it's going to go from 268 to 466. And we're going to call, basically the translation to your current workflow is that we're calling Berryman Canyon a Q3 because we're not ending the segment there. So 268 to 466, all right. 268 to 0.466. Okay, and so because Berryman Canyon is here, I'm just going to try to everything here at the same time. So you see the Berryman Canyon point shows up at the right place because its measure is appropriate relative to here and here, to the ODOs in those two places. Is that, Keith, addressing the question?
Yeah, that's the result of that's the end product of what needs to be done, right?
Okay.
Which is fine, but it's the intermediate piece I'm trying to figure out how. Basically, maybe I can ask it this way. Like, is there an easier way to basically insert new TSN records into the TSN sequence listing new, while in GeoMedia, instead of having to, what I'm thinking about is, it looks like we have to update the sequence listing before we do any play, or make any updates to either the all roads or, anything, in GeoMedia.
So you're thinking like the equivalent of dummy points?
Yeah, or just like a segment of roads, or a segment that's been added. You know what I'm saying? It looks like we have to update the sequence listing before we make any of these updates. Because like
yeah,
like is there an easier way? Instead of having to update the sequence listing outside of here, and then bringing it into GeoMedia to figure out, okay, these are the new segments we're going to have to look at, and instead of, because for this table that you're showing us, it looks like we'll have to update each record, right? So that's a Q1 previously, right? I'm just trying to figure out, is there an easier way to bring in those 20 locations into the sequence listing list, instead of having to insert manually the post mile, the odometer, landmark descriptions,
Doesn't, but TSN gives you all the new sequence listing records.
Right.
And I mean, I mean, TSN gives you all the new sequence listing records with, ideally with landmark information.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
yeah.
So
right.
You don't have to.
I'm thinking more like the maintenance piece. What like we'll do the poll, and then we'll already know maybe 20 routes to change, and we're gonna do this. We're not gonna do just a one-time poll. We're gonna do like continuously, right? So let's say tomorrow we do another poll. There's another section that's changed. Now we have to back out, update the sequence listing, and run back in here and say, okay, now what's changed? Oh yeah, there's two. We have 2 routes that change, and there are small segments. Now we have to, what I'm saying? So I'm just thinking maintenance-wise, we're moving towards a faster update process instead of once a year, right? I'm just thinking, how do we, and how can we, and what can GeoMedia do,
Well, the way I would approach that, I wouldn't think of it in terms of adding to the sequence list table. I would think of it as emptying it out and populating it with fresh data from TSN. And
basically we'll be updating the database, or the GeoMedia Access Warehouse database, right? With new records and
Yeah, but that are from TSN. I mean, the only case where you might add, I could see a possibility of manually adding your own records to the sequence list is in the case of dummy points. It seems to me that, I mean, that's why there's old and there's new.
Okay,
The old shows
you what you're saying. Yeah. What was there in the new, and I guess we'll have to somehow put that into documentation, that.
Oh, it isn't
documentation. Or just just something, note, hey, something just to, or maybe a reminder we'll put in there, where the data, as it moves, the GeoMedia Access Warehouse, where it stores the sequence listing, that's we have to tie that. Yeah, it's very important to put that in there. But
and that said, Tim's point last week about better integrating the database that processes the ODO values with with what GeoMedia is looking at here right now. You know, I mean, I think there's some sense to that too. That would streamline things as well.
Yeah, yeah. We'll have to connect to our current ArcGIS database.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Let me finish up this route here. So, all right, the next point is the trail behind the subdivision, which is this guy right here. So, just always checking my configurations. All right, and I should, what else I should do is make sure. All right, El Camino Real is 466 to 806. All right. Blam. So that just knocked out everything from here up to here. So it placed a point that had no landmark description at all, which, by the way, in the old sequence listing data was this guy that's kind of in red. And it also knocked out this one that's ostensibly at the bottom of the canyon. So there's sort of a canyon in here. Or I'm sorry, right here, bottom of the canyon. And then the last one will be to the end, which is at 806 to 917. Oh, something I should have shown you too is I have these labels for the new sequence listing points, so that as you add new route segments, you can see right on the map the odometer for the previous sequence listing point, which is helpful. So now I only have to remember 917. So again, insert. I think when you get used to using this insert tool, you'll find that you don't have to constantly reactivate it. I'm still, all right, there to there, and that's going to be 997.806 to 0.917. Done. So we've now ingested what used to be an off-system route right here into Route 997. And all of these new sequence listing points for 997 are accounted for. Make sure I've addressed everything in the document. Yep, that's it. So the next document is document 5, which addresses export of this data to ArcGIS and of course also moving that into loading to GeoTest, which again, like we spoke about yesterday, we need to iron out a few details and make sure that the content we're uploading to GeoTest is valid. So we still have a little bit of work to get that workflow dialed in enough to fully document. So we're going to cut off the training part here and maybe move on to a conversation about the export stuff, if that is okay with the guys. unless there's any more questions to address on this workflow of lengthening or adding to a route from local ownership.
I don't have any questions at the moment.
Okay, cool. I'll pause the recording.